So your record came out, what is it, a couple weeks ago now, I guess, almost. And what's it been like having a record out in this environment? Is it different for you?
It's very different. I mean, this is my 8th record. I mean, the thing is, every record release is different, because I think for me, it's about like how old you are and who you are at that point in time.
Sure.
So, you know, my first record came out when I was 19 and I had 0 expectations. I mean, I had, you know, my producer and manager and people at the time getting excited about it, saying this is going to do well, but, you know, you sort of think, oh no, I don't know if I believe that. Then the following records were, because the first one had blown up so much, in Europe at least, the following records were suddenly needing to follow the success of the first one. There was quite a relentless schedule. You know, there was a very typical music industry schedule. You know, this was at a time when CDs were still selling really well. And then, of course, the digital revolution happened and CD sales went down.
Yeah.
I was signed to an indie label that was run by my manager. There were really great people there, but of course the situation made things really difficult in terms of keeping those sales going, keeping the creative output really up there. So, you know, I actually really suffered in 2010. I had to sort of stop doing, you know, that relentless schedule and that speed. And so since then, it's been about finding a tempo that's appropriate and really finding, I guess, a new way of doing things. And what excites me now, even if we forget the pandemic, is with the digital revolution, there's like, the rules are just have pretty much gone out the window. You know, there isn't a black and white sign of what is a successful record anymore.
Right.
You know, I mean, at least here in England, when I was growing up and in my early years in the music industry, everyone knew what a #1 album was or what the #1 single was. That is just not part of culture anymore. It's not part of mainstream culture. So it's as if the curtains have been slightly drawn on the music industry and we're able to now work in much more kind of closed setting.
Yep.
And I actually really like that. What that has meant for me is I've been able to take a number of years to do some personal research that excites me, which is to do with lyric writing and working with words. And and I've loved doing that. One of my favorite things about music and songs are bringing to life words and how they blend with music. So to have been able to do that has meant a lot. And then this pandemic happens and it's even more original.
Right, exactly.
And I think, you know, we're artists. So like, you know, we didn't sign up to have a predictable life, really, did we?
Right. Yep. And so speaking of mixing the lyrics with the music, one of your collaborators is your producer, Leo Abrams. So how does that collaboration work for this record?
Well, first of all, Leo came on board because I was looking for a producer who would captain the musicians in the studio in the best way possible. I'd actually co-produced my last record, which was collaboration with the Gory Women's Choir. And they're a choir from back home in Georgia. And that record was pretty much an a cappella record. I played a little bit of acoustic guitar on it. And I felt as a producer, I could do that. But I knew for this album, I wanted to work with musicians again. I wanted a really great rhythm section. And I also sort of dreamed of having beautiful orchestrations, but I didn't think that far ahead. Mm-hmm. I knew the musicians and the captaining of the musicians would be really important. And so actually Tim Harris, who's been in my band for many years, who is a true artist, and he's the one that recommended Leo to me. And he was like, okay, he's a genius guitarist himself, and he will also, you know, I've seen him work as a producer and he'll do a good job. So I met up with Leo, and what was, you know, quite majestic about him was that he said, you know, my job as a producer is to bring to life the artist's vision. And that was a very, welcoming and open thing for him to say.
Definitely. So when he said that, what did you say to him? What was your vision as expressed from you to him?
Well, so I said to him that, first of all, I wanted this record to celebrate great musicianship.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted people to hear this record and be like, wow, those are great playing there. That's a great atmosphere that's been caught. That's a great spirit that's been caught by the players. And then I said, but equally important is the songs themselves. I was like, everything stands on the quality of the songs. And I said, the lyrics are really the front and center of everything to me. And I'd mentioned to him that I'd been working on specifically lyric writing over the last few years. I'd looked at different fields that use words as a form of, as the material. And I said, and they are really the heart and center of everything. And I said, I also wanted it to have a depth of field, the production. I want it to sort of feel like an invisible movie, that, you have the front space where things occupy, but I also want things to move, from the foreground to the background and vice versa. And, but, I had all these sort of desires, but also at the same time, I could tell that he was a very special artist, Leo, and that he needed to have space to express himself too. And he really did that with the arrangements of the strings.
I noticed the string arrangements, they're very profound and right in there. And what was the strings? Are they from Georgia? The company that you used?
The orchestra is from Georgia. The story of the strings on the record started with the records that I guess I played to Leo. So one was a Georgian composer called Gia Cancelli. He's a classical composer who can make very sort of interesting textures, very nostalgic, very heartwarming, very emotional, but also powerful classical compositions. And I also played him a Ramsey Lewis record, in some of the Charles Stepney recordings.
Right.
And to be honest, I didn't know what we would get in terms of what type of arrangements he would end up doing. And I mean, I only heard a few snippets before we were actually in the studio with the orchestra that Leo played me, in MIDI form.
Right.
And I thought they sounded great. There was a few kind of melodic motifs that I would sometimes hum that he would be like, oh, that's really great. I'll incorporate that into this. But I have to say, when I sat in the at the Georgian film studios, now it's known as Lena Records, and the orchestra was playing, I was really blown away. Just the force of them, but the appropriateness of them to the songs, and how they carried the songs blew my mind. And I just kind of, sat there in awe, and I looked at Leo and I thought, this is some serious stuff.
And speaking of Georgia, I see you shot a video there as well for Your Longing Is Gone.
Your longing is gone. Now don't go trying to force it. Your longing is gone. I'm gonna leave with the morning dew.
This record has a very female perspective. England is one of the motifs on this record. Men are one of the motifs on this record. Relationships are.
Sure.
And so I wanted to work with this photographer to make this video because she's a female photographer and she films women in a very interesting way. She captures them in a very honest and beautiful, both delicate and strong way, and I thought she would be right for directing this.
Right. And what was it like making the video? It was shot in Tbilisi, was it?
It was shot in Batumi, actually. It was shot in the Ajara region, where the Black Sea is.
Uh-huh.
Now that's basically the town where I spent all my holidays. You know,
Right.
we would go there every summer. And it was remarkable. I mean, Georgia's a very small country, so for them to have a music video being shot was a big deal. So, for example, the Ajara Tourist Board actually closed off a border between Turkey and Georgia for us, which was completely, you know, unnecessary, but it was amazing. They were so proud that, you know, 2 Georgian women were collaborating and making a video. And yeah, it was just cool. You know, that part of the world represents for me my summer holidays, a certain sense of freedom, a sense of wildness, because, you know, Georgia really suffered in the 90s from the breakdown of the Soviet Union, but there's still so much like art and there's so much passion in the language. And it was nice to kind of be in that environment, you know, making this video.
Right. So, I realize that's kind of your birth country, and then you moved to the UK and all that. So has your relationship with that country changed over the years, especially since you go back now and work there?
Yeah, it has changed, but the country itself has changed massively too. I mean, we left and the country was on its knees. The 90s is known as the dark decade.
Right.
Because there wasn't, you know, for people, there wasn't electricity, there wasn't hot water, you know, all that infrastructure basically just died. And now in the last 10 to 15 years, it's been really developing very beautifully. And they managed to make a great mixture of like the modern and the traditional. So for example, they've got some of the best, like beautiful, tasteful hotels that I've seen, you know, and I've traveled a lot around the world, and
right.
They've just got really good style. They do them with this sort of dedication of like a temple, but then the coolness of like a Berlin club, you know, so that's really cool. And then you'll see on the corner of the same street a great bakery run by a granny who's in her 60s, you know, so and I'm really proud of that. And then most importantly, the artists are doing great work, you know, like Mariam, the photographer, Levan Laridze, who's a Georgian painter. I mean, he's a legend. He's been around for many years, but, you know, I think the internet and the country just developing and people just embracing education and, you know, looking to the future is really, really helping it become a very special place. So yeah, my relationship has changed because now I'm kind of going there thinking, wow, this is actually a huge sort of cultural asset for me to be able to learn from, you know, and dive deeper into what I'm trying to do.
And does it change the way you think about yourself as well?
Going to Georgia?
Or just being more associated with Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, completely. I've always thought of myself as being lucky enough to know and have 2 cultures, right, and to know them so deeply. So yeah, I've always come to England and I look around here through the eyes of a Georgian. And then when I go back to Georgia, there is this feeling of returning home. Also, it's kind of rose tinted with the fact that I live in England. And so I look at Georgia from an English perspective, you know, because I have a very childlike, naive adoration of Georgia, which, for example, my mum says isn't the real representation of Georgia. And I'm like, oh, and I wonder why that is. And maybe it's because, you know, I have all these opportunities outside of Georgia, you know, and I'm able to live and work and do my work in music here in the UK. But still, there's something precious about both places. Gotcha.
Now, the record came out almost 2 weeks ago, the 16th. How have you been able to get any kind of interaction with fans about it, with being kind of locked down at the same time?
Well, actually, the lockdown has, if anything, taught me to really embrace social media. And I'm able to actually engage with them in a very realistic way. I mean, in a real way. So before the record came out, we did this thing for about 15 weeks where I would do a reverse interview with the fans, and we called it extreme fan engagement. And so I got to meet like so many beautiful people And I got to speak to them for 10 minutes. I got to ask them about their backgrounds, their childhood, where they were currently living, like what their passions in life was, what their vision for the future was. And so I feel like these friendships have developed. And so now, they are just being so sweet and wonderful. And so far, I haven't seen any negative things on social media. I think they're being very nice to me.
Did you learn anything about your fans and about the people, how they look to you and interact with you from this?
Well, I learned that, I had an inkling about this, but doing the reverse fan interviews really found it for me up. They're very intelligent.
Uh-huh.
They're very kind, and they're very wise people. And yeah, it just made me think, I need to do them proud.
I think you probably have. And what have you been being creative over the kind of lockdown time? Have you been writing?
Well, I've been doing a lot of reading, because that to me is so important.
And what kind of stuff do you
as
read?
you can imagine, well, actually at the moment I've been reading the Greek plays.
Really?
And also I've got, my favorite has been, and I have it right here, the Virginia Woolf Diaries.
Okay. I see it, yes.
I'm a big fan of Virginia Woolf's writing. And I read her volume 2 in January, and I just loved it. And I love how, she really beats herself up about not writing regularly.
Right. As we all do.
And she's, and she's very open about her insecurities in it. So it's an absolute gold mine. So yeah, I love that. I'm also reading the Young Stalin book. Well, frankly, I've got too many books on the go at the moment. So that's my big problem at the moment.
Yeah, well,
the other creative outlet is photography.
Oh.
I've ordered, after taking the front cover of the album, I ordered a Pentax 6x7 camera.
Right.
So it's like a medium format film. And I'm loving that. That's really cool.
So do you see that kind of incorporating into what you do in the future?
I think possibly, yeah. What's lovely about film photography is that it brings a certain level of formality to the occasion of taking a photo. And interestingly enough, just thinking about Virginia, in one of her entries, she said that she's realized the best mood to be in when she's writing is to have a sense of formality.
That's very interesting. Because a lot of people, like especially photographers, because of the nature of the beast these days, they can just keep pushing the click button until they get a decent shot, and there is no formality, I guess. So how do you how do you put that in, get that into what you do? It's got to be training.
The way I do it, with film, with photography, you get a film camera, and so you have a limited amount of, and it costs £12 to develop a single film. So that gives you a sense of formality. But when it comes to writing, the way I've done it is I actually have a studio office that I rent out, and it's in an office block where people work. And I'm not, these aren't artists working; these are accountants, a lawyer's firm. And so I go there, and that's where I do my writing work. And I guess that gives me that sense of formality.
Cool. So you mentioned it's been a while since you put out an album of original material, and because you needed time to do whatever it is you do. So can we expect another long time, or perhaps because of this kind of lockdown, maybe it'll happen a little bit sooner?
I really hope it will happen much sooner. I'd love to get into a routine where it does, it's not a once in a 4-year situation. Though I have to say the demands for interviews have been pretty relentless. So
I apologize.
No, not at all. But it's great because that, look, on the one hand, you want the record to do really well, and you want to promote it, and you want to give it a chance. People have worked so hard on it. It's been many years in the making. So I think there has to be a 6-month period where you're like, okay, I'm gonna shout about this record because I'm so proud of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about and there is this sort of a mind shift from that mode to going back into, going on that adventure as an artist, diving deep into yourself and your perceptions of the world.
And I guess one adventure as an artist that's kind of absent from here is the live performance thing at the moment. How is that making you feel about?
Well, I think what I love about it is that it will make it so incredibly special.
Right.
I think a lot of people don't talk about the fact that over the last few years, live performances have become like one of the things you have to fight when you could do performances all the time was keeping it fresh, keeping that spark, keeping that childlike, because the nature of touring is you end up, going to a different city every night, and it could be for months and months, and and sometimes you end up singing the same set list. The way I would deal with that is the musicians would always have freedom to improvise. We'd always try and have a new spark. You'd always know that you were playing a new room and a new group of people, but it was still something you had to work for. Whereas now that's been taken away from us completely.
Right.
So it's going to be a totally new beginning, and I think it'll be very interesting.
Very interesting. All righty. Well, I can't wait to see what happens next. I think it's very exciting, just the whole scenario, just as long as everybody survives.
I do. I completely agree. Yeah, it's kind of given everyone a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for talking to me. I appreciate it. Hopefully you can come down to New Zealand at some point and do your thing.
I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.